Hi everyone, welcome back to HarborHome. I am Melissa with HarborHome32.com. If you are a regular watcher of HarborHome, please do me a favor right now and click the subscribe button to HarborHome so you don't miss out on any videos. Also, this tells YouTube that these videos and this channel are valuable and enjoyable, and it will help YouTube share with others. That way others can experience the inspiration of whole food cooking and simple living that we are experiencing over here in our Harbor home. Today I'm going to share my tried and true recipe for a sourdough artisan loaf. I came up with this recipe because I really wanted a sourdough loaf that could be used as a sandwich loaf. Now, if you are familiar with artisan loaves, they have these beautiful big air pockets and a really nice crispy outside, and I love that too. However, when you are making a sandwich out of that bread, the big holes can be kind of hard because condiments fall through, like mayo or butter or jelly or meat or whatever it is. And so I wanted a bread that was a little bit more tightly woven but yet still had this beautiful fluffy soft inside. And that is what I have created in my sourdough artisan sandwich loaf recipe. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. My coffee time is my favorite time of the day. Put my son down for a nap, get my camera out, do a little work, with a cup of coffee. It's usually decaf, but still, oh, I just can't get over the flavor. I've loved it ever since I was 15. Haven't changed my mind since. I talked a lot about sourdough and benefits of fermented food in my last sourdough video. I'll link it right up here for you guys. You can go back and listen to that if you are unfamiliar with sourdough or fermented foods. I highly recommend taking a look at it. In that video, I also share with you how to make your own sourdough starter. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and check it out. Today, in showing you how to make this loaf, I'm actually kind of giving you the next step as to how to use your sourdough starter and a really simple bread recipe. With sourdough bread, you usually start about 24 hours before you actually want to eat the loaf. So what that means is that you will feed your starter typically, let's say the night before, in the evening before you go to bed. You feed it 1 cup of water, 1 cup of flour, and you let the ferment process begin by getting a really active, bubbly starter. And then the next morning you mix your dough. And then that dough will sit for another 24 hours and then you'll bake it the next day. So that's actually a little bit longer than 24 hours. You can do it a little bit shorter, but that's how I typically like to make my sourdough bread. So what I did, I fed my starter the night before, and then this morning that you see here, I mixed up my sourdough bread dough. This recipe is super simple, and the process really is simple. It may seem complicated, but it's not. The more you practice it, the more comfortable you'll be. And honestly, one of the biggest things in making something like bread and even sourdough bread is just the patience it takes. We're so used to really quick, fast food in our culture, but waiting for something that is fermenting and is homemade will just really give you so many more health benefits if you can plan ahead, make a loaf of bread, and you'll get to experience all the great benefits of that, including a lower grocery bill. So this recipe is 3 cups of flour, 1 cup of active starter, 1 cup of warm water, yes it has to be warm, 1 tablespoon of honey, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I like to remember this recipe as 3-1-1. I actually wanted to name it that, but it wouldn't really make any sense unless you heard it explained. But you can simply remember 3-1-1. 3 cups of flour, 1 cup of water, 1 cup of starter, and then 1 of everything else, honey and salt. The best way I have found to mix dough is by adding all your ingredients except for your warm water. Put the flour, the starter, the honey, the salt in, give it a little bit of a mix with your dough hook, and then slowly pour in your 1 cup of warm water. This is because the amount of water that you need for your loaf will really depend on the weather or the temperature in your kitchen that day. For example, when I make loaves of bread in the summer, I need a lot less water just because of the humidity level in the air. Now, winters here in Minnesota are pretty dry, so that means that I need a little bit more water. By slowly pouring in the water, you can watch the dough as it's mixing and determine if you need any more water or need any less water, and stop it whenever you need to. So the consistency that you're looking for is a dough that doesn't have any more dry clumps of flour at the bottom of the bowl. It's kind of sticky, it has like a sloshy sound to it when it's being mixed around. If it's much more thick than that and it looks pretty dry, or it looks a little too wet, like it's too thin, you can either add more flour or water depending on the need. But slowly pouring in your water will allow you to kind of stop the flow of water when it looks about right. For this loaf, measured out a little over a cup of water, but I used just about a cup of water, maybe a tad less than a cup of water. Now, if you were just to pour it all in, then you would maybe need to add a little bit more flour, and then that could go back and forth for a while. So controlling the pour of the water makes a lot more sense as far as just getting the right consistency that you're looking for. So after you just slowly mix everything in, you're not kneading anything at this point, just slowly mix it in. The next key thing in making a really great loaf of bread, I like to walk away from the mixer, set a timer for 15 minutes, and do something else, come back, and then finish the kneading process. This allows the ingredients to just kind of sink in together and get congealed before you start the kneading. I mix my dough on a medium to high speed for about 5 minutes. I find this is just the perfect amount of time. And then what you want to do at the end of that 5 minutes is test it to make sure that all the gluten has developed all the way through and it's ready to rise. And you do that by taking a little chunk of the dough, stretching it in your hands, and if you get this like nice thin layer, like you just stretch it as far as you can, and you get this nice thin layer that kind of looks see-through, then it's ready. That is called the window pane test. If you can kind of see through it like a stained glass window, that is what then it's ready to rise. Now, if it breaks apart, you can't even stretch it, that means it's not ready and it needs a little bit more time. So keep kneading it with a dough hook until you get that, until it passes the window pane test. Then what you do is you take a greased either glass or ceramic bowl. Yes, those are the two kinds of bowls that are best for rising sourdough bread. The material of a stainless steel or plastic really interferes with the fermentation of the dough, and so you want to have either a glass or a ceramic bowl. Grease it, put the dough inside of it, and then cover it with a towel or even saran wrap, plastic wrap, whatever you call it, and let it rise on your counter for anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, or even 8 if you're really in a pinch. I love this taste of a really soured dough, so I let mine rise a whole 24 hours. Now, if you are someone that is gluten sensitive, not gluten completely intolerant, if you're celiac, you should not be making a regular sourdough bread. You should be making a gluten-free sourdough bread, which is out there. I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but if that's what you're looking for, find a gluten-free recipe. This is regular gluten. But if you're gluten, if you have a bit of an intolerance to gluten, sometimes sourdough bread can actually be beneficial. You don't have as strong of a reaction to it because the gluten is broken down a little bit more. So to get that, if you want those benefits, then a full 24 hours is the best way to go. However, anywhere from 8 to 12 up to 24 is also a fine time. Your bread will rise in that amount of time. Then when it's fully rise and it's time to bake it, take it out and put it on a floured surface, and then you start shaping your dough. There's a lot of different ways that people shape their dough. You may have seen some really fancy bread makers on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. They do all of these crazy techniques to get it to just be just right. And by all means, take the time to learn those kinds of things. It's really fun. However, for a daily bread, something just super simple, I just shape it with my hands. I just kind of turn it around a few times, fold it, roll it until it's just this nice tall little ball of dough, and then I cover it with a generous layer of flour to do the scoring. I let it sit for 15 minutes while my oven is preheating to 450, and then I score it. Now this scoring process, again, can be really artistic and fun, or it can be really simple with just like one line or a cross down the center of your loaf. The scoring does actually have a purpose. It allows the air to escape from your bread loaf as it's cooking. So if you were not to score it, the bread would do whatever it needs to do naturally and would just kind of break apart at all these random places, which is completely fine. It'll still turn out. But as far as keeping it like a nice round loaf, scoring it can help with that. You can make all kinds of fun designs, or you can keep it really simple. It's actually really fun to practice. If you ever get into making your own bread at home, if there's a really cold winter day or a stretch of time where you're at home, just make a loaf of bread every day and just practice the scoring. It's super fun. So you bake it at 450 in a Dutch oven for 30 minutes, and then you remove the lid of the Dutch oven and you bake it for another 15. This gives it a nice little crisp on the outside. I do recommend using a Dutch oven. I have had some friends and some people I know try to bake without a Dutch oven, and it is pretty challenging. It doesn't rise quite right. There's just a steaming aspect that the Dutch oven gives that kind of creates that really tall loaf, that really big fluffy insides, and crisps it really nice. You can look up other ways as to how to make it if you don't have a Dutch oven, but I highly recommend putting one on your list. If you're going to be someone that wants to make bread on a regular basis, to save yourself some money, to eat healthier food, I highly recommend getting a Dutch oven. Put it on a Christmas list, a birthday wish list, whatever you want to do. It's well worth the investment. Okay. So then, when your bread is done, you take out your bread and you let it sit on a cutting board for about 30 minutes. This is extremely hard to do because it smells so good. There is nothing like the smell of fresh homemade bread. You are going to have to practice a lot of self-control if you want to wait 30 minutes. I don't have that self-control, so what I typically do, I just slice off a little piece on the very outside, like the very ends of it, because there's not as much air that needs to escape out of that piece. But if you do wait the 30 minutes and you cut down the center, and you'll have a very beautiful little piece of bread. There you have it. That is how you make an artisan sandwich loaf. I hope you guys like this video. Please stick around for more videos on whole food cooking, simple living, and hospitality. Thank you so much for ringing the doorbell at 32 HarborHome. See you next time. Bienvenue!